operational as well, and just actually some of the things,
I'll jump through ice flows.
Hello. Welcome to our session today. My name is Bev Cornaby. I'm the Director of Policy and Systems Change Collaborations at the University of Cambridge Institute for Sustainability Leadership, where I'm also our Director of our UK Corporate Leaders Group. We're delighted to bring you this session today, which is from NBSAPs to NDCs, bringing climate and nature together to raise national ambition. At CISL, we've been working on the area of nature and climate change for a number of years, and seeing it as important to actually bring it together, given the interrelationship between both of them in terms of climate and nature loss, and actually how climate is contributing to nature loss, but also nature loss is a significant driver of climate change. We're doing work at the moment which is around nature positive business models, how we can support corporates to actually take action, but also how we bring it through policy as well. At the moment, we're at COP29, where the climate negotiations are taking place, but we've recently had COP16, the Convention on Biological Diversity, taking place in Cali in Colombia, where countries were having to submit updated national biodiversity strategies and action plans. At this COP, we've already had a few countries coming forward with their NDCs, their nationally determined contributions for 2035. That includes the UK setting out theirs earlier in the week, as well as Brazil and also the UAE. It's important, though, that with these international moments, that we don't just look at them as separate things that get taken down nationally in different ways, but we actually look at how do we integrate them. There's certainly many discussions happening at both COPs in relation to how we bring climate and nature together, but we also need to do that on a national level as well. An important part for both is actually how businesses approach this, and therefore we work with businesses in terms of how they integrate climate and nature. And these are some of the things that we're going to explore today, is how do we enable this to happen on a national level that also aligns with how business is working at a strategic level to deliver real change. So I'm delighted today to be joined by 5 different speakers and panelists. We will first hear a few words from Anthony Agotha, Special Envoy for Climate and Environment Diplomacy in the EU External Action Service. We also have joining us Fiona Duggan, who's a Global Sustainability Senior Manager for Unilever. Angela Pinhati, who's the Chief Sustainability Officer at Natura & Company. Simon Hensel-Thomas, Global Director of Climate and Nature in IKEA. And Stuart Brocklehurst, Deputy Vice Chancellor for Business Engagement and Innovation at the University of Exeter. Before I hand over to Anthony, just to say a few opening words, just to say that we are going to have a chance for a quick Q&A at the end. So please do have a think about what questions that you might want to put to our panelists. So Tony, if I can invite you just to say a few words just to set the context. Thank you.
Okay, well, first of all, thank you very much for the invitation. And I think this is the first event I've been to in 5 years at COPs where we actually make a link between climate action and environmental action, between climate change and environmental degradation. And I'm in this function now as a diplomat. I used to be in the Green Deal cabinet of Executive Vice President Timmermans when we started on this roller coaster ride in the European Commission in 2019. And back then, our goal was to put environment action on the same level as climate action, to have our Paris moment. I'll be honest with you, we didn't manage that. However, we did get a little bit further in terms of making the scientific link. I think you recall this IPPBS, IPCC double report where they made an umbilical link between the two. They're two sides of the same coin. They can help each other. They can also drag each other down. I'm also working on climate and security nexus, where we put out a joint communication in 2023, but very explicitly said climate change and environmental degradation with regard to peace, security, and defense. Now, when we did the Green Deal, we didn't know. We knew the window of opportunity was open and could close shut very quickly. Then we had COVID. Then we had the war, and that kind of focused our minds on a more geopolitical trend on how to make this transition work. So all the focus was on the so-called Fit for 55. Now, in the nature side, it has been a bit bumpy. There was resistance from some stakeholders who felt legitimately that, you know, their livelihoods would be threatened. I mean, and the narrative was, well, if we don't do anything, that business model that was so successful for us for decades in terms of agriculture will no longer be successful for us if the water levels go down, if the soil is depleted where you have to pump in more toxins, more pesticides to grow stuff. So we have to make a change. This morning I was at an oceans event. Same thing goes for the oceans. The oceans rise, ice caps melt, the acidification, the bleaching of the corals, dead fish on the Florida shores. It's really something that we have to heed. And I think, and I want to make that point very clearly, we have to reach our audience, the citizens, and bring them with us, because I suspect that around this group, we're probably light years ahead, and we need to speak in terms that people understand, like health. This is not about nature per se. This is not about the planet per se. This is about us and our children and our health and well-being. So I think that's the most important thing, that we recognize that link, that we're able to create that awareness, that we can look for nature-based solutions. There are a lot of solutions which we have pushed aside because we had a modern chemical way to do it, and that was profitable. We need to make nature profitable again. Countries in Africa and the vulnerable countries need to be able to develop, but we want to make sure they don't make the same mistakes we did, because our forests, for instance, are global public goods. And so one of the things the European Commission does, and I'll stop there, is to see, like with carbon credits, where we're really fighting to get an accountable, with integrity, transparent system, how can we ensure, for instance, that those forests in Gabon, in Papua New Guinea, Guyana, and Suriname do not become cheap offsets for major emitters, but how do we make it profitable to keep these forests in place? And we haven't squared that circle, because people say, why are we paying for doing nothing? That's a bit simple, but that's the quandary. So we're thinking, and our President von der Leyen spoke about biocertificates. We're working real hard, because if we can crunch that nut, then suddenly maintaining your forest while developing it for the locals could actually be a solution. I will stop there. There's more to say.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. And it's really helpful to set the context, especially in terms of actually how we bring climate, nature, and people together. I think that is really important in terms of how we move forward on this. I'm going to go to each panelist now in turn and just ask you to introduce yourselves and just give a very quick thought in terms of actually what came from COP16 and how we feed that into COP29. Fiona, if I can go to you first.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Fiona Duggan. I'm the Global Senior Sustainability Manager for Climate Advocacy at Unilever. That's a very long title. It just means I do climate advocacy. So you asked what are the outcomes that I can see from COP and how we can integrate it into this COP process. Well, I think there was three things that struck me. So number one, there was an agreement on the Cali Fund, which I think was very progressive and good to show that actually these things do work. We can get agreement. Number two, I think it was very positive that there's now a permanent body for Indigenous advisors to the COP process, which I think is very well needed. But then on the